Hello and welcome to the Lost in Possession podcast. With the title race pretty much done and dusted, let's be honest, everything now goes towards the bottom of the table with five teams and potentially some more fighting out for one of the most exciting relegation battles in Premier League history. Let's dissect the last round of games and see who we think is going to go down. Roll the intro. Yes, hello, dear viewer slash listener. It's us, the Lost in Possession podcast, here to give you some more football knowledge, expertise, and hopefully some banter along the way. We're going to be discussing the relegation fight as mentioned in the intro, and we think this is something that really is hotting up now. When teams look dead and buried, they seem to have revitalized. Teams that look like they were going to be safe are now back in it again. Teams still to play each other in this relegation fight as well, with just a few games left, five for some, four for others. We really want to find out, where this is going, and who we think is going down. So Jamie, let's start with you. If we look at the games that have just gone on this weekend, anything in particular that stands out as a particular threat to somebody, or
Well, you've got to look. You've
now?
got to just look at the Bournemouth Leeds game, really, on that's happened on Sunday. 4-1 at home. Like, that's what a result for Bournemouth. And to me, that's meant they're staying up. Despite, I think all three of us would have to admit we were wrong. I think we all had Bournemouth going down. It's not the case anymore. They've been phenomenal in the past few weeks, getting a away win at Spurs, scoring goals at Spurs' ground. I've seen is very hard to do. So the fact they went 3-1 in the game, very well done on their behalf. But today, 4-1 against the Leeds side, who are in the mix as well, very much in the mix, shows where they've come, and they don't need to worry about the drop anymore. I don't see the teams below all the teams below them getting enough points to catch them up. So I think that's the biggest sort of result. But then you also got to flip it on its head, and that's where Leeds are in trouble. I think Leeds are 1 point above the relegation zone, and that's where I think it's a massive concern when you've got to look at their fixtures left. They've got City away, home to Newcastle, away to West Ham, and at home to Spurs. You wanted safety to be like in control by now. So the fact that they're in it is worrying for Leeds.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. I mean, I think first of all, full credit goes to Gary Neal at Bournemouth. They're now 10 points clear of 18th, who are Leicester, and absolutely thrash Leeds 4-1. I mean, we're saying about Leeds, and Jordan will get your thoughts in a sec, but Leeds had two games previously, if you include that Bournemouth one against Leicester as well, where that was their probably chance to dig themselves out of it. But we need to, we need to really see if Leeds are going to stay up here, because they got thrashed 4-1 today. They got thrashed 6-1 at home to Liverpool a couple of weeks back, 5-1 at home to Palace a few weeks back, 4-1 away to Arsenal. Even when they look like they get themselves out of it by beating Wolves, beating Forest, they pull themselves back in. What do you make of Leeds? Do you think they're going to stay up, Jordan, or is it, are they marching on together down to the Championship?
Well, I think leaky Leeds are going back down at the minute because they can't defend for love nor money, and they're ticking all the boxes now out of nowhere. Again, we said earlier in the season, you felt like they had the quality to stay up. Thought they'd score enough goals, but now they're barely scoring goals. They're conceding in disgusting numbers, and we said it probably a year ago under Bielsa. They can't defend. They just can't defend. And they've had a new manager after new manager. And it's the same old problems that are recurring. And for all their attacking quality, you can argue Bamford's been off the pace. Obviously, we saw his sitter against Leicester. But if you can't defend, you don't get anywhere in this league. And when you're conceding not just 2 or 3, you're conceding 4, 5 goals, 6 goals in games, it's impossible to win. And Jamie, you just touched on it. There are 4 games left. Like, they're not they're certainly not favourites in any of those games, and the way they're playing at the minute, you'd back them to concede 2 or 3 guaranteed. So suddenly Leeds have gone from a position of they weren't really completely in it, in my opinion, to now I'd say they're one of the out of all the teams. I'd say they're probably most likely. We'll have to debate this later in the podcast, but
Yeah,
Leeds are in serious trouble now, and something needs to change in the next game, or for me, they're going down.
yeah, yeah. That's a very good point. I mean, before we move on to the next team in this relegation dogfight, it'd be interesting to know what you think the problems are for the. I know we mentioned about the goals conceding. A lot of people blame Jesse Marsh for this, but is it all his fault? Is it the poor recruitment? Is it the poor goalkeeper? Let's be honest, he's not very good. What do you think this is that's causing the issues at Leeds? A lot of fans have been throwing out on social media saying things. So of course, if you are listening, Leeds fans, do give us your feedback as well. But what has gone wrong for them? Because it was Bielsa's were leaking goals. Jesse Marsh has seemed to stop that, but wasn't really scoring. They've got good players. They've got atmosphere to get them, get them over the line. Why isn't it just clicked at all?
It is defensively that's it. They've conceded the most in the Premier League this season, so that's really where it's coming from. And I think Bamford, obviously, he's not been fully fit, and he was what when they did quite well under Bielsa in sort of the first year. They were in the Premier League, was down to having Bamford's goals, so they've completely dried up on that aspect for him being out and then not really fit. So that's the problem. But defensively, they've not strengthened at all. They've and it's just an obvious sort of thing, but they've not done good enough recruitment where you could argue the other teams have tried to at least. And I just don't think Leeds have done a very good job at it at all. What you had with Leeds before, though, under Bielsa was you could have a game where it'd be 4-3, but at the moment they're scoring 1 and then conceding the 4. So that's where I think their problem is. Really, it's both ends. They've not improved defensively despite trying to, but they've done a very poor job of it. And then the goals are dried up through injuries. So that's why they're in this position. And if they did stay up, you probably want a whole new back 4, minimum.
Yeah. They're bang average. They're bang average. That's the reality. Their defence is bang average. Ayling, I don't think's got much quality.
But it's also, they all have a mistake in them. Yeah. And they all consistently make mistakes. And you just can't have that.
They just seem to lose their heads. Like every time they concede 1, I don't know mentally how it works, but maybe no real leader in there between them, and they're all sort of, there's no real character. I can't put my finger on it, but I think the bottom line is they've just got an average defence. And at the minute, I just can't make a case for them.
Okay, so let's move on then from Leeds to 17th place Nottingham Forest, who are level on points with the Whites, just with a worse goal difference, which does say something at this moment in time. What do we make of Forest chances? They've got a big game next week against Southampton. They've got Chelsea to play, Arsenal at home, and then they finish off on Palace away. What do we make of their chances coming up? And why do we think, they're in this situation? I know we'll blame the fact that they have about 14 buses worth of players. But is that the only reason? Are we confident they might stay up? They beat Brighton in the week. They lost again this weekend. Is it consistency? What is it with Forest?
It's got to be home versus away, really, isn't it? That's a massive thing for Forest. Away from home, they're dreadful. I think dreadful's even underplaying it of how bad they've been away from home, and they've got results at home that's kept them in this position. But when I saw them play City, they got a 1-1 draw. Fair enough. I don't expect them to outplay City or anything like that, but they were one of the poorest sides I've watched. And I just didn't understand what their plan was. It wasn't like they tried to defend deep and well. in that game on another day, City would have won that 5 or 6-0, and you couldn't have argued. You just knew, but then they had one shot on target and scored. But that's sort of where I think it is. I don't think they're a very good side, and away from home, which I don't know. Yeah, so they've got to rely on the home game against Southampton. I generally think that is the be all and end all of probably them getting points. They have to get 3 off that. Otherwise, I think they're in such serious trouble because of their away form, which means they probably they could get a point against Chelsea because Chelsea just don't score, really, which Jordan will probably agree with.
I mean, I don't think their fixtures are that bad. I mean, Chelsea away, yeah, we don't know about that one. Palace are on the beach. Let's be honest here.
But it's away from home, and
Away
they're so bad away from home. You
it's their
might as well
best,
just write them off.
but it's their best chance to do it. They've got Arsenal at home the second to last game. Last game at home for Forest. The atmosphere will be electric for that. We know how Arsenal deal with cauldrons like that. That's a
League might have
winnable.
gone. The league might have gone for Arsenal as well, and they're too
Oh,
far off third.
it has gone. Let's correct that there. It
Yeah,
has
but
gone.
statistically, it might have gone on that last game, and
But
you can't get third or first, so you could be sort of done.
Yeah.
But that'll be one they're eyeing up.
I don't think Arsenal will be that. And also, you've got to think Arsenal have got the best away record in the league. That's why they're up there. I know you're writing them off for the league, but they've still been the second best side in the Premier League this season.
Yeah. So it would
and
be.
I think they will have I think they'll have the chances that I saw City have against them, and it's just about taking them. They should be favourites for it, and I think they will. They'll have the opportunity to win that game quite comfortably.
Okay. So there's some winnable games there. They've got the players to do it. You know, Brennan Johnson's got 10 goals for them. Awoni has got 5. Morgan Gibbs White has got 4. So they've got goals in them. So it's not necessarily. It might not necessarily be up front their struggle. I know we said they're away from home. What about the decision to keep Steve Cooper? Do we think that was the right one from Forest? Do you think maybe they should have chopped and changed like some of the other teams have done?
No, I think you have to keep him. You have to keep him. Like, well, look what he's done. Let's I think this happens. This is a bit of a problem with all these sort of lower sides that come up. Steve Cooper. I think Forest. I can't remember the exact stat, but they were basically battling potential relegation from the Championship. Mm-hmm. Cooper then got them promotion. So to then sack him because they've had a tough time in the Prem when they've signed, boatload of players, it's just like, where's the loyalty? Like, I know you can't have too much loyalty these days in football, but like, come on, he has earned the season. Whatever they do, he's earned that right. And again, Chelsea have had the issues we've seen. You sign too many players, it doesn't work overnight perfectly. So again, you've got to factor that into the decision making as well. He's been in a tough position, doesn't know his best lineup. But
I do think they have quite a nice fixture list out of the lot there, though. To be fair, I think with the fact that relegation rivals like Palace are way clear of it, that definitely eases that pressure on them there. I think in terms of must win. If Palace are going to be on the beach, they're going to probably fancy their chances.
And they've shown me something that two or 3 weeks ago I would have said 100% they're going down, but they have shown me something these last few weeks. The win over Brighton, going to Anfield and coming back twice. I know they lost, and again Brentford, they were unlucky at the weekend. They were there, they had the 3 points, and then although they bottled it, they're showing signs of life. And as you said, Arsenal, I think City would have won the title on that last day already. So that's a game they'll get points out of. Chelsea, as we said, we can't score, so they're guaranteed a point. And Southampton will be at the bottom. Southampton are sinking at the minute, and they'll fancy 3 points in that game as well.
Yeah, I think they'll mark that one as their big one. If they're going to get out of it, it's going to be that. Okay, so let's look then, as we mentioned, to Leicester, their East Midlands rivals, who are of course playing 19th place Everton in their next game. What do we make of Leicester then? Because it looked like they were sliding down, and there was no way back there. Brendan Rodgers is now gone. Dean Smith has come in, despite people questioning that appointment. They got a crucial draw at Leeds in their last game. Again, a relegation rival, so they didn't lose. They got the point. They showed signs of life away to City as well, even though they did lose. What do we make of Leicester's chances then? Are they probably the favourite of the group here to get out? Everton next, Fulham away, Liverpool home, Newcastle home, West Ham home. Sorry, Newcastle away. So they've got some good games. I think they might. I mean, Everton they've got to do it, and West Ham they've got to do it, I suppose. But what do you think?
I think it all comes down to tomorrow, or Monday night, whenever we release this. That game against Everton is massive. They're at home, which is an advantage for them. I think it's out of them two. If one of them teams lose, I think they go down. That's how big of a game it is. However, obviously, in that game, let's say it's a draw, Leicester technically get out of the bottom three and would go up to 16th ahead of Leeds and Forest, just with a draw. That's how close it is, obviously, down there. I think Leicester still have the quality that is more than the other teams, which should keep them up. But yeah, I think the game against Everton is all the pressure is all there, and that's what's key to it. But it's been a very weird season for Leicester. I do want to say one thing was on our last relegation video, a Leicester fan did comment on our YouTube video and said if they lost to Palace, which they did, he says they were going to go down, which his prediction could be true. So fair play to him if he's right, although I think he'd like to be wrong at the same time. And that's just saying we do listen, we do watch and reply to comments. So do comment and we will get back to you.
Even if it's abuse.
hit that subscribe button while you're there as well. It takes 2 seconds.
What do you think of Leicester's chances, George?
I think, based on the fact, as Jamie touched on it, the fact they can draw on the big game Monday and go up 2 places gives them the edge right now. This is a side who have won the league in the last 10 years. This is a side who have won the FA Cup. This is a side who have been in Europe. So them going down would be an absolute catastrophe for the whole town. There's everything. But this game, like, you look at the league table and you can't do this game justice tomorrow in terms of how important it is. We talked about City and Arsenal being the game of the season at the top of the table. Right now, this is the game of the season at the bottom of the table because you've got 2 teams basically on the same points, both in the relegation zone. If one wins, they go up 2-3 places. So this is, we're doing Gary Neville's job for him selling this game, but this is the biggest game of the season in the bottom half of the table. So I'm very excited to see what happens. I still think Leicester have the edge because they're at home, because of everything I've just said. Everton. Look at the scenes. Look at the scenes we saw last season when Lampard managed to keep them up. How are they there again? Like, what is going on? Well, you've got Sean Dyche.
I think
it's mad.
I think, I see what you mean. I think out of that group there, Leicester have the best squad, right? I would, on paper, Harvey Barnes is their top scorer. I think that probably says maybe quite a lot about them at this moment in time. But you say about that, normally if you flirt with relegation for a few years, eventually it's going to catch up with you. And Everton have fallen victim to that again. The financial problems, the mismanagement with the transfers they've made. I mean, they've been shocking. They've been absolutely appalling. And obviously they bring Sean Dyche in. It looks like it's turned a corner, but he hasn't won in quite a long time. His last 5 games have been 3 defeats and 2 draws. A very spirited draw against the poor Tottenham side we could add, but yeah, this game's big for them. I know we're mentioning, how Everton are in this situation, but do we think they're going to get out of it?
Like I said, if they lose tomorrow, I just don't see it.
Really don't. No. I mean,
so that's a tough one, and I think Everton,
because they've got.
Sorry, Everton. I think the problem is they've probably brought in the right manager, but there's still so many problems that have gone on, and that's from the owner and the way that the club's been invested into. I think it is the overall problem, and what is going to be sort of ironic for them is Everton are going to go down for the first time since the 1950s, and they're going to get a new stadium, and and that's not going to help them in the sort of getting back to the Prem. I don't think. I think it's going to cause. We've actually got to pay off this stadium, and we're not getting the proper Premier League money. I know there's parachute payments and things like that, so that could be a serious problem for them. But if you look at Everton, they're the lowest scoring team in the league. 25 goals all season.
That's shocking.
That's abysmal. It's and I think Harry Kane has got as many goals. So forget that people talk about Haaland scoring more than it. Then you've got the second place in the Golden Boot with the same amount of goals, or close to that. I don't know how many Kane's got exactly, but I think it's around 25.
I mean, Damari Gray's their top scorer with 6, followed by Dwight Hill on 5, and Anthony Gordon on 3, and he left in January. So that really does say all about Everton's situation at the moment. I mean, their fixtures, you wouldn't even say their fixtures are kind to them either. Like, they got obviously Leicester away, they still got Brighton away, Man City at home, which could be something they might get up for. Wolves away, Bournemouth at home. But I think their big problem is it's always one step forward, 2 step back with them. They'll get a brilliant result at Arsenal, say they'll beat Arsenal, and then they'll go and lose at home. I don't know, to Leeds. I know they didn't, but that's like an example. And then you think they're going to claw out of it by beating a relegation rival, and then they lose to 2 teams that have nothing to play for. That's what I think is concerning with them. You know, their players are all over the place, different style of players as well. Don't really seem to fit a philosophy. But they're pretty poor. Let's look at last place then, Southampton, just before we round up who we think's going where, etc. Now, again, another defeat for Southampton. Went 1-0 up against Newcastle. Ended up losing quite convincingly in the end. Are we convinced that they're down? Are they gone?
They've not got the worst remaining games, but they're going to need something big, and it's going to have to be 3 or 4 perfect games for them, which when they've had 34 attempts and sort of failed, it's hard to see it happening. The case for them, and the only not positive, but the only hope is that Bournemouth, as we said, were pretty much signed off by certainly us 3, certainly every major pundit, you know, anyone with any logic or knowledge about football pretty much had Bournemouth written off. So the fact they've then now got 4 wins out of 5, 12 points. Southampton fans, the optimistic ones, might look at that and go, look, in theory, I mean, it's not even theory, it's more just pure hope. But, you know, Forest, Fulham, Brighton, away home to Liverpool, it's not impossible for them to pick up points in those games, but they're fighting a losing battle, I feel. And yeah, as you know, this is a Southampton side who have beat Chelsea twice, they've beat Man City, knocked them out of a cup. It's just unthinkable that they're here, but eventually the luck does run out.
I mean, and before you sort of input, Jamie, I do think Southampton, it's been a very poor season for them. I think if you look around the club, the fans are convinced they're going down. If you've got fans that have accepted fate, you know, there's nothing to get behind players. You know, the players not even going to feel that belief that they're already going into a game going to lose. You know, they've got some decent young players, but I think the recruitment has been shocking. I think it was poor for a situation they're in, for a team that shouldn't be, you know, if a team's looking to solidify mid-table, don't just decide to start all over again and bring in a load of random young players. You know, over the years, we've seen them teetering with it with some of their poor performances with the 9-0s. You know, they sacked Hasenhüttl. Whether you think it's the right or wrong decision is up to you. They brought in Nathan Jones, which I think was just a stupid appointment because I think Luton was a good club structure. He was rubbish at Stoke. They were asking for it. And they've been asking for it for a long, long time. And now it's come to roost. You know, they don't promote academy players anymore. You know, it's all come to roost. And they're in a situation where they're probably the best to bounce back immediately out of the lot. But
I wouldn't even agree.
It's tough. It's a real tough one for them. And I think Yeah, I think they're a sinking ship at this moment in time.
Yeah, I think they're gone, to be perfectly honest, because even if you actually say that the fixtures, obviously got 4 games left, even if they win 3, that means that at least sort of like Forest and Leeds need to just win 1, and they'll be above like they'll have the same amount of points. It's just too much to do, and I think in one of the games being against Liverpool, okay, Liverpool haven't been as amazing this season, but they're still trying to fight for some European football next season, so they've got something to play for. Brighton away is not an easy game. It's not like they've got that favourable fixtures. It wouldn't surprise me if they lose to Forest, even though I don't think Forest are very good. Southampton have been worse. But there's no hope for them, in my opinion. I think they're down and gone. Even if they have the form of what Bournemouth have, let's say, like I said, win 3 of the 4 games, it's still not going to be enough. And it's just, they're not going to turn around and get that. I think it summed them up, was probably their best performance of the season was at the Emirates. Now, I was very happy with the result, don't get me wrong. But they still let it slip, and they almost came away with nothing from that. And I know Arsenal were sort of a very good side, but it's kind of like when you're 3-1 up, you've got 8 so minutes added on. You shouldn't be nearly losing that 4-3. Like, okay, it finished 3-3, but it nearly went for 4. So
yeah,
it's like,
it summed them up, didn't it? It summed them up.
Yeah.
Like you should, no matter who you're playing, you shouldn't concede 2 goals in deep, stoppage time like that. You just shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I mean,
The squad though as well. Like you look at their squad, and weirdly, I remember distinctly thinking it like well earlier in the season when we played them the first game. I just remember seeing their lineup, and the first thought was that is such a bad side. And ironically, obviously, they went and beat us, but that's we're a separate conversation. But even looking at their squad now, their starting lineup. If I'm being honest, other than Ward-Prowse, it is just a championship side. That might be a little bit harsh, but there's no standouts. There's no real Prem leaders or Prem experience. And I think they've gambled with too much to young, exciting players. But you need some of that core who have been through it before, and I don't think they've got any of that.
Which now they'll probably lose some of them, like Lavia. He's probably the standout one they brought in the summer. Obviously, Chelsea tried to buy him after Southampton bought him, which was quite a weird one.
We've still been linked. Yeah, we've still been linked with him.
He's been linked with sort of a move back to City, but we've got like a rebuy clause, not this summer, next summer. So it's more. There's that. It's. I just don't know how they get out of it without stripping what they were trying to do completely, and then going for some more experienced players, maybe some championship players who have been in the league and get the league, because it can be such a hard league to get back out of.
Okay, so that was going to be my next sort of question then. I mean, who do we think is going down out of the 5? I mean, we could give West Ham if they're not careful, and if they focus on the Conference League, because West Ham have lost their last 2. If they focus on the Conference League too much, they might slip in there. But I think that the others are so bad, they'll probably just survive. Just like that. But out of the teams in this relegation fight, who do you think are the 3 going down now? Now that we've pretty much got a final, almost confirmation, and who do you think stands to lose the most if they go down? Like, who is in the worst trouble out of the lots? Jamie, let's start with you.
Okay, so my 3 to go down will be Southampton bottom, and then I think it's going to be Everton, and I think it'll then be Forest. I think they're the 3 that will go down. I think Leicester and Leeds will survive just. However, if you're going out of them 5 teams who would lose the most, I'm thinking it's either Leicester or Everton. Everton, due to getting a new stadium, I think it's already a bit toxic around with the whole owner situation. You've seen them stopping players in cars in the past. So it could be a very, very toxic environment at Everton, which could spiral even more. And then adding in the new stadium for pretty much no reason. Like, I don't mean it overall. They probably need a new stadium, but they need to be in the Prem for that, in my opinion. Otherwise, it's going to be, oh, it looks pretty, but we're playing crap football. However, I think it could be worse for Leicester due to the fact is I think they'll lose a few players. They'll lose Maddison. I think they're going to lose Maddison either way. They're going to lose Maddison. Sancho's already signed for Atletico Madrid in the summer. He might not have been that great, but it's still losing players, and Leicester didn't invest any money pretty much in the last summer window. So that's where they've got to put money in their pocket, money into the transfer market to try and improve. And when they lose players as well, I just think their quality is going to dip massively. And it could be something that spirals where they stay in the Championship for quite a while. So I think it's worse. I think Leeds, Forest, Forest, I think it's only been one season since they come up, so they know the Championship, and I think they've got some quality that will stay, that could get them back up. Southampton's an odd one. I don't actually know what's going to go on with Southampton, really. And then Leeds, I think they could go back and then start doing the more attacking football, and they won't get as punished as much. Because if you look at like Burnley, it's like they've been playing very good football this. They then came against City and we battered them. We punished their defensive errors. And you get away with it more in the Championship. So I think Leicester would be the worst outcome, but Everton's a close second in terms of who it would be worse for.
I'll disagree on the teams. I think Southampton will. I think it's too little too late. They'll go down. I do think Leicester, because of what I said and the fact they're at home for this massive game against Everton, I think Leicester will nick a win. So I'm going to say Everton will also go down, because after that loss, they're going to struggle. Not got the best fixtures either. For my third team, that's where I disagree. I'm actually going to say Leeds are going to be the final spot. For the reasons I said earlier, you cannot concede 4, 5, 6 goals at the business end of the season when you're in a relegation battle. And not only does it do awful things for your confidence, but the strikers are also like, I'm scoring a goal, but we're 3-0 down. And it sounds a bit ridiculous, but that's also going to annoy the strikers and maybe knock their confidence. And Forest, as I said, I think they've shown just a little bit of a glimpse of hope and a few good performances. So I think they're going to nick a win out of nowhere. As I said, it probably will be against us, but I just believe they can get some points in those last 4 fixtures somehow, some way. And who it will affect the worst, I think Everton, because again, I guess similar to what you touched on already, but look at the scenes they had last year to stay up and how much it meant to them. Similarly, look at the scenes with the fans as it is. Then you think about all the pressures already on the owner and they want him out. Then you consider the fact they're going to lose Calvert-Lewin, they're going to lose Pickford, they're going to lose those kind of players. They've already lost their bright, shiny prospect, Anthony Gordon. So I think suddenly the team who's never got relegated could end up being in the Championship and not being able to get out. As you said, with a new stadium, which might cripple them financially. So I think Everton are in serious bother here if they go down.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd agree with you. I think Southampton are down. I think Leeds and Forest might join them. I think Everton and Leicester will have just enough to scrape out of it. I think Leicester have shown the most fight in the last couple of games than the others have. Leeds concede too many goals. Forest concede too many goals. I think Forest's home thing will keep them up, but Leicester and Everton, they need to make sure one of them gets the win to make sure that they're out of the trouble there. In terms of who stands to lose the most, from the 3 I picked, I think all 3 are okay. I think Forest would just have to trim their squad. Leeds would probably need to make sure they get the right coaching for them. Southampton will be fine because they'll They've got some young players who I don't really think it's their fault that they're in that situation. They've got Bazunu, Leiva, and I think someone like Teller, who's on loan at Burnley, if they decide to recall him and keep him there, they'll probably get 40 million for Ward-Prowse or something. So I think they're in the best position because they've got a fresher sort of squad. If Everton do go down, they're definitely the worst situation with this new stadium. And I would argue that, other than Pickford and Calvert-Lewin, if he stays fit, there's no one in that squad you'd want to buy, especially on the wages they're on. And if you can't shift them, all them players causing a stink at that club, they could be at risk of going down again. We saw it with Sunderland. We saw it with Wolves. If you keep too many of your players, you could be going down again. Leicester, I think they'll have enough, but they've got real troubles ahead. Tillemans is going to leave this summer. Tete, Amati, Soyuncu's already gone, as we said. Mendy, Evans, Bertrand, Perez, they're all out of contract. Vardy's got another year. Madison's got another year. They've got more problems creeping up on them now than the others do, if you know what I mean. They need to sort themselves out. They need to get their managerial appointment correct if they're going to go down, because they could be in trouble of not coming back up. But I think it doesn't look rosy for Southampton out, in terms of the relegation. But Everton and Leicester stand the most to lose, if that makes sense. They need to hope they stay up and hope for even more next season. It's been a shocker from those two especially.
Well, there you have it. A negative note to end on if you're a Leicester or Everton fan, unless, of course, you win the big match of the season. As always, that wraps us up for another episode. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Give us a follow on Insta. Like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill. Here we go.